What happens when an arrogant flight attendant dares to scold the son of a powerful businesswoman? A surprising plot twist will leave you speechless. Follow the dramatic and moving journey of a mother and son seeking justice, along with a valuable lesson about equality and courage. Did this story touch your heart? Like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories and to spread the meaningful message of justice and love. The gentle hum of the aircraft engines lulled most passengers into a state of drowsy anticipation. Outside, fluffy clouds drifted past like lazy sheep, the sun casting a warm glow through the oval windows. Inside, the cabin of the Boeing 777, bound for Los Angeles from New York, buzzed with the low murmur of conversations, the clinking of ice in plastic cups, and the occasional cry of a restless infant. Among the passengers were Emily and her 10-year-old son, Michael. Emily, a woman with warm brown eyes and a smile that could light up a room, was flipping through a magazine, while Michael, a bright-eyed boy with a mop of curly hair, was engrossed in a comic book. He was excitedly recounting the latest adventures of his favorite superhero to his mother, his words tumbling over each other in his eagerness. And then, "Mom, you won't believe it. Spider-Man swung right in and..." Michael's voice trailed off as a flight attendant approached their row. Jennifer, a tall blonde woman with perfectly manicured nails and a crisp uniform, stood by their aisle with a trolley laden with drinks and snacks. Her smile, however, seemed reserved for the passengers in the first-class cabin, fading into a neutral expression as she reached economy. "Would you like anything to drink?" she asked, her voice devoid of any warmth. "Apple juice for him, please," Emily replied, gesturing towards Michael. "And a ginger ale for me." Jennifer poured the drinks with a practiced hand, her movements efficient but impersonal. As she handed Michael his juice, the trolley wobbled slightly, causing the cup to tilt precariously. Before either of them could react, the juice sloshed over the rim, spilling onto Michael's lap and unfortunately onto Jennifer's pristine white uniform. A gasp escaped Emily's lips as she quickly grabbed napkins to mop up the mess. "Oh dear, I'm so sorry," she apologized, dabbing at Michael's pants. "Michael, honey, are you all right?" Michael, his eyes wide with alarm, nodded mutely, his gaze fixed on the growing stain on Jennifer's uniform. Jennifer, however, was not taking the incident well. Her face contorted in a mask of fury, her voice rising above the gentle hum of the plane. "Look what you've done," she shrieked, pointing an accusing finger at Michael. "You clumsy little..." She trailed off, her eyes narrowing as she took in Michael's brown skin and tightly coiled hair. Emily's heart sank. She recognized the look in Jennifer's eyes, the subtle shift in her demeanor. It wasn't just about the spilled juice anymore. I didn't mean to," Michael stammered, his voice trembling. "It was an accident." "Accident?" Jennifer scoffed. "You kids have no respect for anything. Running around, making a mess." "He wasn't running around," Emily interjected, her voice firm. "He was sitting right here. It was just an accident." "Oh, so now you're defending him?" Jennifer sneered. "Typical. No discipline, no respect." Emily's temper flared. "That's enough," she said, her voice low but dangerous. "My son apologized. It was an accident. You don't need to speak to him like that." Jennifer's eyes flashed. "How dare you talk to me like that? I'm the authority here. You need to teach your kids some manners." "And you," Emily retorted, "need to learn some basic decency." The commotion had attracted the attention of other passengers. Some looked away, pretending not to notice. Others watched with a morbid curiosity, their faces a mixture of amusement and discomfort. A few, however, looked on with open disapproval, their expressions mirroring Emily's anger. Among those watching was an elderly gentleman seated a few rows ahead. Thomas, a seasoned traveler with a keen eye for human behavior, observed the scene with a growing sense of unease. He had witnessed countless acts of injustice in his life, and this blatant display of prejudice stirred something deep within him. He knew he couldn't just sit idly by. Meanwhile, Jennifer, fueled by her anger and a sense of superiority, continued her tirade. "You people are all the same," she hissed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Always causing trouble." Emily's breath hitched. "You people?" she repeated, her voice shaking. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Jennifer, realizing she had gone too far, tried to backpedal. I just meant," she stammered, but the damage was done. The atmosphere in the cabin was thick with tension. Michael, overwhelmed by the situation, burst into tears, burying his face in his mother's shoulder. Emily, her arms wrapped protectively around her son, glared at Jennifer, her eyes blazing, with a mixture of fury and hurt. Just then, the cockpit door opened, and the captain emerged. A tall, imposing man with a stern expression, he surveyed the scene with a frown. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his voice commanding. "Attention." Jennifer, quickly regaining her composure, plastered a fake smile on her face. "Just a little misunderstanding, Captain," she said sweetly. "This young man spilled his drink, and his mother was being a bit difficult." Emily, about to protest, felt a hand on her arm. It was Thomas, the elderly gentleman. He gave her a reassuring nod, his eyes conveying a silent message. "Let me handle this." Thomas stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. "Captain, I believe there's been a bit more than a misunderstanding. I witnessed the entire incident, and I can assure you that the flight attendant's behavior was completely unacceptable." He proceeded to recount the events, his voice unwavering, his words painting a clear picture of Jennifer's prejudice and unprofessional conduct. As he spoke, a wave of murmurs rippled through the cabin, the passengers now openly siding with Emily and Michael. The captain listened intently, his frown deepening. He then turned to Jennifer, his eyes cold and hard. "Is this true?" he asked. Jennifer, her face pale, could only stammer a weak denial. The captain, however, was not convinced. "I'll be speaking to you about this later," he said curtly. He then turned to Emily and Michael, his expression softening. "I sincerely apologize for this unpleasant experience," he said. "Please accept my apologies on behalf of the airline." Emily, still shaken but grateful for the unexpected support, nodded her thanks. As the captain returned to the cockpit, a sense of relief washed over her. She had found an ally in this unexpected battle, and for the first time since the incident began, she felt a glimmer of hope. The rest of the flight passed in relative silence. Jennifer, her face flushed with shame, avoided eye contact with Emily and Michael. The other passengers, however, were more than happy to offer words of comfort and support. As the plane prepared to land in Los Angeles, Emily knew that this was just the beginning of her fight for justice. She would not let this incident go unpunished. She would make sure that Jennifer and the airline were held accountable for their actions. The captain's intervention had brought a temporary truce, but the tension in the cabin remained palpable. Jennifer, relegated to the galley, fumed silently, her pride wounded, her anger simmering. She felt humiliated, exposed in front of the passengers she usually commanded with an air of authority. "Nosy old man," she muttered under her breath, shooting a venomous glance towards Thomas. "Who does he think he is, interfering in my business?" Her colleague Sarah, a petite brunette with kind eyes, observed Jennifer's agitation with concern. She had witnessed the entire incident and felt a deep sense of unease. Jennifer's outburst had been shocking, her words laced with a prejudice that Sarah found abhorrent. "Jennifer," she began tentatively, "perhaps you were a bit harsh with that boy." "Harsh?" Jennifer snapped, rounding on Sarah. "He spilled juice all over me, and his mother, that uppity woman, had the audacity to talk back to me." Sarah sighed. "It was an accident," she persisted. "He's just a child." "Oh, please," Jennifer scoffed. "Don't give me that innocent child routine. They're all the same, those people. No respect, no manners." Sarah flinched at the casual bigotry in Jennifer's tone. She wanted to argue, to defend Emily and Michael, but fear held her back. Jennifer was senior crew, and crossing her could have repercussions. Instead, she chose a more cautious approach. "Look," she said, trying to appease Jennifer, "I understand you're upset, but maybe you should just let it go. The captain's already spoken to them. It's over." "Over?" Jennifer's voice rose. "It's not over until I say it's over. That woman humiliated me in front of everyone. I'll make sure she regrets this." Sarah, alarmed by the vindictive glint in Jennifer's eyes, decided to retreat. She knew there was no reasoning with Jennifer when she was in this mood. Meanwhile, Emily, though still shaken by the confrontation, felt a renewed sense of determination. She would not let Jennifer's hateful words go unanswered. She would fight for her son, for his dignity, for their right to be treated with respect. "Are you okay, Mom?" Michael asked, his voice small and uncertain. Emily forced a smile, stroking his hair. "I'm fine, honey, just a little upset." "That lady was mean," Michael said, his lower lip trembling. "Yes, she was," Emily agreed, "but we won't let her get away with it." She looked up and caught Thomas's eye. He smiled gently, offering a silent message of support. Emily felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected ally. She knew she wouldn't be alone in this fight. As the flight continued, Emily's thoughts raced. She had to come up with a plan, a way to hold Jennifer accountable for her actions. She couldn't let this incident slide, not just for Michael's sake, but for all those who had been subjected to similar prejudice. Suddenly, she remembered an incident that had occurred earlier in the flight. Before the altercation with Michael, Jennifer had been assisting a passenger in a wheelchair. The man, struggling to reach his bag in the overhead compartment, had asked for Jennifer's help. Instead of offering assistance, Jennifer had sighed, dramatically, and muttered something about incompetent people slowing everyone down. She had then proceeded to yank the bag down, nearly hitting the man in the head in the process. Emily's heart sank. It wasn't just about Michael. Jennifer's behavior was a pattern, a blatant disregard for anyone she deemed beneath her. This wasn't just a case of a spilled drink. It was about something much bigger, something far more insidious. This realization fueled Emily's resolve. She wouldn't just fight for Michael. She would fight for everyone who had been marginalized, ignored, or mistreated. She would use this incident to expose the ugliness of prejudice and demand accountability. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Emily felt a surge of adrenaline. This was not the end, it was just the beginning. She would make sure Jennifer's actions had consequences, not just for her sake, but for the sake of everyone who deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. The arrival gate at LAX buzzed with the usual cacophony of a busy airport. Suitcases rumbled on the conveyor belt, excited greetings echoed through the hall, and announcements blared overhead. Amidst this chaos, Emily felt a strange sense of calm descend upon her. The initial shock of the confrontation with Jennifer had given way to a steely resolve. She would not be a victim. She would fight back. As she waited for their luggage, Emily felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she saw a young woman with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. It was Sarah, the flight attendant. I just wanted to make sure you and Michael were okay," Sarah stammered, her gaze darting nervously around. Emily offered a reassuring smile. "We're fine, thank you. It was unsettling, but we'll be all right." Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'm so sorry about what happened," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jennifer, she's not usually like that. At least, not that bad." Emily raised an eyebrow, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Not usually?" Sarah's cheeks flushed. "Well, she can be demanding," she admitted. "And she has a temper. But I've never seen her behave like that with a passenger before." "Perhaps," Emily countered, her voice laced with a hint of skepticism. "She just chooses her targets carefully." Sarah's eyes widened. "You mean?" She trailed off, understanding dawning on her face. Emily nodded. "I think it's pretty clear that her behavior had a lot to do with the color of my son's skin." Sarah's expression turned somber. I can't say I disagree," she admitted. "It was awful. I wanted to say something, but you were afraid," Emily finished for her, understanding the pressure Sarah must have felt to remain silent. Sarah nodded miserably. "I'm not proud of it," she confessed. "But I have bills to pay, a family to support." Emily placed a comforting hand on Sarah's arm. "I understand," she said gently. "It's not easy to speak up, especially when your job is on the line. A moment of silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Then, Sarah spoke, her voice filled with a newfound determination. "But that doesn't make it right," she declared. "And I can't just pretend it didn't happen. I need to do something." Emily's heart leaped with hope. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice eager. "I want to help you," Sarah said, her eyes shining with conviction. "I'll give you a statement. Tell them what I saw. Jennifer needs to be held accountable for her actions." Emily's face broke into a wide smile. "Sarah, that would be amazing," she exclaimed, squeezing Sarah's hand in gratitude. "Thank you so much." Sarah blushed, but her eyes held a newfound confidence. "It's the least I can do," she said. "It's time someone stood up to her." Just then, a familiar voice interrupted their conversation. "Well, well, well," a man chuckled. "It seems I've stumbled upon a conspiracy." Emily and Sarah turned to see Thomas, the elderly gentleman from the flight, approaching them with a twinkle in his eye. "Don't worry," he reassured them. "I'm on your side. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. It seems we have a shared goal." He explained that he too had been appalled by Jennifer's behavior and was determined to see justice done. He offered his own testimony, adding further weight to Emily's case. As they discussed their next steps, a sense of camaraderie blossomed among them. They were no longer just strangers who happened to be on the same flight. They were allies, united in their pursuit of justice. Emily felt a surge of gratitude for these unexpected allies. Their support gave her strength and renewed her determination. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was no longer alone. With Sarah and Thomas by her side, she was ready to fight for what was right, to hold Jennifer accountable, and to ensure that no one else would have to endure such blatant discrimination. The baggage carousel churned out a steady stream of suitcases, each one a symbol of journeys ended and new beginnings. Emily, with Michael by her side and her newfound allies close by, felt a sense of cautious optimism. She had gathered her belongings, both physical and emotional, and was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they exited the terminal, the warm California sun greeted them like an old friend. The bustling energy of Los Angeles, a stark contrast to the sterile confines of the aircraft, hummed around them. Yet amidst the vibrant cityscape, Emily couldn't shake off the lingering sting of Jennifer's words, the echo of her prejudice still reverberating in her mind. "Mom," Michael piped up, his small hand tugging at hers. "Are we going home now?" Emily knelt down, meeting her son's gaze. "Yes, sweetheart," she replied, forcing a smile. "But first we have some important things to take care of." She explained to Michael in simple terms that they were going to report Jennifer's behavior to the airline. She emphasized that what Jennifer had done was wrong, that it was important to stand up against injustice, even when it was scary. Michael, though still shaken by the incident, nodded solemnly. He understood on a fundamental level that Jennifer's words had been hurtful, that her actions had been unfair. He trusted his mother to make things right. As they hailed a taxi, Emily turned to Sarah and Thomas. "Thank you again for your support," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "It means the world to me." "Don't mention it," Thomas replied, his eyes twinkling. "It's high time someone put that woman in her place." Sarah nodded in agreement. "I'll gather my thoughts and write down my statement as soon as I get home," she promised. They exchanged contact information, forming a pact to stay in touch and coordinate their efforts. As Emily and Michael settled into the taxi, a sense of purpose filled her. She had a plan, a team, and a burning desire for justice. However, as the taxi navigated through the city streets, Emily's thoughts drifted back to her own past, to the struggles she had faced as a black woman in a society that often seemed determined to hold her back. She remembered the subtle slights, the dismissive glances, the countless times she had to work twice as hard to prove herself. She had come a long way since those early days. Through sheer determination and unwavering self-belief, she had built a successful career, a comfortable life for herself and Michael. Yet, the incident on the plane had ripped open old wounds, reminding her that prejudice and discrimination were still deeply ingrained in the fabric of society. A wave of doubt washed over her. Would the airline even take her complaint seriously? Would they believe her word against Jennifer's? Would they dismiss her as an oversensitive passenger, a troublemaker? She glanced at Michael, his innocent face gazing out the window, oblivious to the turmoil in his mother's mind. She couldn't let those doubts consume her. She had to fight, not just for herself, but for Michael, for his future, for the hope of a world where he wouldn't have to face the same prejudices she had endured. As the taxi pulled up to their apartment building, Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battles to come. She would face the airline, she would confront Jennifer, and she would demand accountability. This was not just about a spilled drink. It was about dignity, respect, and the fundamental right to be treated as an equal. The journey had just begun, and Emily was ready to see it through to the end. The familiar scent of home welcomed Emily and Michael as they stepped into their cozy apartment. The warmth of the setting sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the living room. Yet, despite the comforting surroundings, the events of the day weighed heavily on Emily's mind. After settling Michael in with a snack and his favorite cartoons, Emily retreated to her bedroom, the weight of her anger and frustration pressing down on her. She replayed the incident with Jennifer in her mind, each hateful word, each dismissive gesture fueling her determination to seek justice. She reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the airline's customer service number. A wave of doubt washed over her. Would they even listen to her complaint? Would they believe her, a black woman, over one of their own employees? She hesitated, the fear of being dismissed, of having her experience invalidated, gnawing at her. But then she thought of Michael, of the hurt in his eyes, of the injustice he had suffered. She couldn't let fear silence her. She had to be his voice, his advocate. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the call button. The automated voice on the other end greeted her with a chirpy welcome, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within her. She navigated through the menu options, her frustration growing with each automated prompt. Finally, she was connected to a customer service representative. Emily recounted the incident, her voice trembling at first, then gaining strength as she described Jennifer's behavior, her discriminatory remarks, and the impact it had had on her and Michael. The representative, a young woman with a bored tone, listened with detached politeness. She offered a perfunctory apology, assuring Emily that the airline took such matters seriously. However, her words lacked sincerity, her tone implying that Emily was overreacting, making a fuss over a minor incident. "We'll investigate the matter," the representative said, her voice flat. "However, please understand that these things take time. We need to gather all the facts, hear from all parties involved." Emily's heart sank. She recognized the tactic, the delaying tactic designed to wear down complainants, to discourage them from pursuing their claims. But she wouldn't be deterred. "I understand," she said, her voice firm. "But I expect a thorough investigation. I have witnesses who can corroborate my account." She mentioned Sarah and Thomas, emphasizing their willingness to provide statements. The representative's tone shifted slightly, a hint of interest replacing the previous indifference. Witnesses, especially airline employees, carried weight. "Thank you for that information," the representative said, her voice regaining some of its initial chirpiness. "We'll be sure to contact them. In the meantime, please provide us with your contact information and any other relevant details." Emily provided the requested information, her determination growing with each passing moment. She would not let this go. She would see this through to the end, no matter how long it took, no matter how many obstacles she had to overcome. As she ended the call, a new challenge arose. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from her sister, Angela. Angela, ever the voice of reason, had a knack for pouring cold water on Emily's passionate pursuits. "Emily, what have you gotten yourself into now?" Angela's voice greeted her, a mixture of concern and disapproval. Emily sighed. She knew this conversation wouldn't be easy. Angela, with her cautious nature and aversion to confrontation, would undoubtedly urge her to let the matter drop, to avoid rocking the boat. "It's about that incident on the plane," Emily explained, bracing herself for Angela's reaction. "Oh, Emily," Angela groaned. Why can't you just let things go? It was a spilled drink, a misunderstanding. Why do you have to make a big deal out of it? Emily bristled at her sister's dismissive tone. It wasn't just a spilled drink, Angela, she retorted. It was about racism, about prejudice. That woman humiliated Michael, and I won't stand for it. But what can you do? Angela countered. You're fighting a huge corporation. They'll crush. You like a bug? Maybe, Emily admitted. But I have to try. I can't just let them get away with it, Angela sighed. Emily, you're so stubborn. Why can't you just pick your battles? This isn't worth the stress, the hassle. Emily's patience wore thin. It's about principle, Angela, she said, her voice rising. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The conversation continued, a back and forth between Emily's fiery determination and Angela's cautious pragmatism. Emily, though frustrated by her sister's lack of support, refused to back down. She knew this fight was important, not just for herself and Michael, but for all those who had been silenced by fear, by doubt, by the weight of systemic injustice. As she hung up the phone, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would face the airline, she would confront Jennifer, and she would not be deterred by the walls of resistance that stood in her way. This was her battle, and she would fight it with every ounce of her being. The days following the incident were a blur of activity for Emily. She juggled her work responsibilities with the demands of her self-imposed mission, fueled by a potent mix of anger and determination. She meticulously documented every detail of the encounter with Jennifer, compiling a detailed account of the events, the discriminatory remarks, and the impact it had had on her and Michael. She reached out to Sarah and Thomas, keeping them updated on her progress and coordinating their efforts. Sarah, despite her initial apprehension, proved to be a steadfast ally. She delivered a detailed witness statement, corroborating Emily's account and adding her own observations of Jennifer's unprofessional conduct. Thomas, with his calm demeanor and sharp wit, offered invaluable advice and support, acting as a mentor and confidant in Emily's fight for justice. However, amidst the flurry of activity, Emily couldn't shake off a nagging sense of unease. She noticed a change in Michael, a subtle shift in his demeanor that filled her with concern. He had always been a bright, outgoing child, eager to explore the world around him. But since the incident on the plane, a shadow seemed to have fallen over him. He was quieter, more withdrawn, his usual exuberance replaced by a hesitant uncertainty. He clung to Emily more than usual, seeking reassurance in her presence. His eyes often filled with a travoga that tore at her heart. One evening, as Emily tucked Michael into bed, she noticed him staring at his reflection in the mirror, his brow furrowed, his expression troubled. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked softly, her voice filled with concern. Michael hesitated, his gaze fixed on his own image. "Mom," he finally whispered, his voice barely audible. Am I different?" Emily's heart ached at his question. She sat beside him, gently, cupping his face in her hands. "Different?" she repeated, her voice soft and reassuring. "Of course you're different, Michael. Everyone is different. That's what makes us special." Michael's eyes welled up with tears. "But that lady on the plane," he began, his voice choked with emotion. She said... He couldn't finish the sentence, the hurtful words echoing in his mind. Emily's anger flared at the thought of Jennifer's poison seeping into her son's innocent heart. "Michael," she said firmly, her voice filled with conviction. "That woman was wrong. What she said was hateful and untrue. You are perfect just the way you are. Your skin color, your hair, everything about you is beautiful and wonderful." She held him close, showering him with kisses and words of love and affirmation. She explained in age-appropriate terms that some people have prejudices, that they judge others based on their appearance or their background. She emphasized that those prejudices were wrong, that they stemmed from ignorance and fear. "But why, Mom?" Michael asked, his voice filled with confusion. "Why would she be mean to me just because of my skin?" Emily struggled to find an answer that would make sense to a 10-year-old. How could she explain the complexities of racism, the deep-rooted prejudices that had plagued society for centuries? Sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand, she explained gently. They judge others based on stereotypes and misconceptions. But that doesn't make it right. We have to be brave and stand up to those people, show them that their prejudices are wrong. She reassured Michael that he was loved, that he was valued, that his skin color was a source of pride, not shame. She reminded him of all the wonderful things that made him unique: his kind heart, his infectious laughter, his boundless curiosity. As she held him close, Emily felt a surge of protectiveness. She would shield him from the ugliness of the world, fight for his right to grow up in a society free from prejudice and discrimination. This incident had left a scar on his young soul, but she would be there to help him heal, to teach him resilience, to instill in him the confidence to embrace his identity and stand tall in the face of adversity. The fight for justice was no longer just about holding Jennifer accountable. It was about protecting Michael, about ensuring that he would never again question his worth, his beauty, his place in the world. The wheels of justice, as Emily soon discovered, turned slowly. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from the airline regarding her complaint. The initial flurry of activity, the phone calls, the emails, the gathering of witness statements, had given way to an agonizing silence. The lack of response fueled her anxieties, whispering doubts in her ear. Had she been too hasty in filing a complaint? Was she overreacting? Would the airline simply sweep the incident under the rug, protecting their own employee at the expense of justice? These doubts gnawed at her, casting a shadow over her days. She found herself constantly checking her phone, hoping for a call, an email, any sign that her complaint was being taken seriously. The waiting was a torment, a constant reminder of the unresolved conflict, the lingering injustice. One evening, as Emily sat at her kitchen table, lost in a spiral of anxious thoughts, her phone finally rang. Her heart leaped with anticipation as she saw the unfamiliar number on the display. Could this be the call she had been waiting for? With trembling fingers, she answered the call. A woman's voice, crisp and professional, identified herself as a representative from the airline's customer relations department. She informed Emily that they had received her complaint and were conducting a thorough investigation into the matter. Emily's spirits lifted. Finally, some progress. She eagerly shared the details of the incident, emphasizing the discriminatory nature of Jennifer's remarks and the impact it had had on her and Michael. She mentioned Sarah and Thomas, reminding the representative of their willingness to provide witness statements. The representative listened attentively, taking detailed notes. She assured Emily that they were committed to providing a fair and impartial resolution to the matter. However, she also cautioned that the investigation would take time, as they needed to gather all the facts and hear from all parties involved. Emily, though frustrated by the continued delays, clung to the hope that justice would eventually prevail. She thanked the representative for the update and ended the call with a renewed sense of determination. Later that evening, as she shared the news with Sarah and Thomas, a wave of relief washed over her. They celebrated the small victory, acknowledging that it was a step in the right direction, a sign that their efforts were not in vain. Sarah, in particular, was elated. She had been wrestling with guilt and anxiety since the incident, torn between her loyalty to her colleagues and her sense of justice. The news that the airline was taking the complaint seriously reassured her that she had made the right decision in speaking out. "I'm so glad I decided to help," she confessed, her voice filled with emotion. "It feels good to finally do something, to stand up for what's right." Thomas nodded in agreement. "Indeed," he said, his eyes twinkling. "It seems our little ripple of defiance is starting to make some waves." Their conversation turned to strategizing their next steps. They discussed the importance of maintaining pressure on the airline, of keeping the issue in the spotlight. Thomas, with his extensive network of contacts, suggested reaching out to local media outlets, sharing Emily's story, and highlighting the issue of racial discrimination in the airline industry. Emily, initially hesitant about the idea of going public, gradually warmed to the suggestion. She realized that her experience could serve as a catalyst for change, a way to raise awareness and hold the airline accountable for its actions. As the evening drew to a close, a renewed sense of purpose filled Emily's heart. The fight was far from over, but she knew she was not alone. With Sarah and Thomas by her side, she was ready to face the challenges ahead, to continue pushing for justice, to ensure that Jennifer's actions would not go unpunished. The glimmer of hope that had ignited within her burned brighter than ever, fueled by the support of her allies and the unwavering belief that truth and justice would ultimately prevail. The quiet hum of the coffee shop provided a soothing backdrop to the clandestine meeting. Emily, Sarah, and Thomas huddled around a corner table, their voices hushed as they discussed their next move. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow on their determined faces. "I think it's time we took this to the next level," Thomas declared, his eyes gleaming with a mischievous spark. "We need to amplify our voices, make sure this story reaches a wider audience." Emily and Sarah exchanged curious glances. "What do you have in mind, Thomas?" Emily inquired. Her curiosity piqued. "The press, my dear," Thomas announced, a sly grin spreading across his face. "We need to get the media involved, expose this injustice to the world." Sarah gasped. "The media?" she echoed, her eyes widening. "But wouldn't that, I don't know, make things worse?" Emily, too, felt a surge of apprehension. The idea of going public, of sharing her story with the world, was daunting. She had always valued her privacy, preferring to keep her personal life out of the spotlight. But Thomas's words had struck a chord within her. "He has a point," she conceded, her voice thoughtful. "If we want to hold the airline accountable, we need to create public pressure. The media can help us do that." Sarah, though still hesitant, acknowledged the logic of their argument. "But what if they don't believe us?" she worried. "What if they side with Jennifer and the airline?" Thomas chuckled. "My dear Sarah," he reassured her, "you underestimate the power of a good story. And this, my friends, is a very good story." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "A story of David versus Goliath, of a mother fighting for her son, of ordinary people standing up to injustice. The media loves a good underdog story. And with our combined testimonies, we have a compelling case." Emily felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. The prospect of sharing her story, of exposing Jennifer's discriminatory behavior, was both empowering and terrifying. But she knew, deep down, that it was the right thing to do. "All right," she declared, her voice firming with resolve. "Let's do it. Let's contact the media." Thomas, with his extensive network of contacts, took the lead. He reached out to a journalist friend of his, a seasoned reporter with a reputation for investigative journalism and a passion for social justice. The journalist, intrigued by the story, agreed to meet with Emily, Sarah, and Thomas to discuss the details. The meeting took place in a quiet corner of a bustling cafe. Emily, Sarah, and Thomas shared their experiences, their voices filled with emotion as they recounted the incident on the plane, the subsequent struggle with the airline, and the impact it had had on their lives. The journalist listened intently, her eyes sparkling with interest. She peppered them with questions, probing for details, seeking to understand the nuances of the situation. She was particularly interested in Jennifer's discriminatory remarks, recognizing the potential for a powerful exposé on racial bias in the airline industry. As the meeting concluded, the journalist assured them that she would investigate the matter thoroughly and publish their story. She promised to protect their identities if they wished to remain anonymous, but encouraged them to consider going public, to lend their voices to the fight against discrimination. Emily, Sarah, and Thomas left the meeting with a renewed sense of hope. They had planted a seed, and now they had to wait for it to grow. The media's involvement could be a game changer, amplifying their voices, putting pressure on the airline, and potentially sparking a wider conversation about racial injustice as EO. They walked out of the cafe. Emily felt a surge of empowerment. She was no longer just a single mother fighting a lonely battle. She had allies, she had a voice, and she was ready to use it to challenge the status quo, to demand justice, and to create a better world for her son and for all those who had been marginalized and discriminated against. The news broke like a thunderclap, shaking the foundations of the seemingly untouchable airline. Emily's story, carefully crafted by the journalist, hit the headlines with the force of a hurricane. The article, titled "Flight Attendants' Racist Rant Sparks Outrage," detailed the incident on the plane, highlighting Jennifer's discriminatory remarks and the airline's sluggish response to Emily's complaint. The story went viral, spreading like wildfire across social media. People from all walks of life expressed their outrage, condemning Jennifer's behavior and demanding that the airline take action. The hashtag #JusticeForMichael trended nationwide, amplifying the public outcry and putting immense pressure on the airline to respond. Emily's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters, bloggers, and television producers, all eager to interview her, to hear her story firsthand. She found herself thrust into the spotlight, her once private life suddenly exposed to the world. The experience was overwhelming, a whirlwind of emotions and media attention. But amidst the chaos, Emily remained focused on her goal, justice for Michael. She used every media opportunity to share her story, to highlight the pain and humiliation that Jennifer's actions had caused. She spoke with eloquence and passion, her words resonating with a public hungry for accountability and change. Sarah and Thomas too played their part, lending their voices to the growing chorus of condemnation. Sarah's testimony, corroborating Emily's account and exposing Jennifer's pattern of unprofessional behavior, added further weight to the accusations. Thomas, with his calm demeanor and insightful commentary, provided a voice of reason amidst the emotional storm. The airline, caught off guard by the swift and fierce public backlash, scrambled to contain the damage. They issued a series of carefully worded statements, expressing their commitment to diversity and inclusion, condemning discrimination of any kind, and promising a thorough investigation into the matter. However, their words rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming public anger. The hashtag boycott gained traction, with thousands of people vowing to take their business elsewhere, until the airline took concrete action against Jennifer. Jennifer, meanwhile, found herself at the center of a media firestorm. Reporters camped outside her apartment, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in her face, demanding answers. Her once pristine image was tarnished, her reputation in tatters. Desperate to salvage her career and reputation, Jennifer went on the offensive. She hired a high-powered lawyer and launched a counter-campaign, denying the accusations, claiming that she was the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by Emily and her allies. She portrayed herself as a hard-working single mother, dedicated to her job, who had been unfairly targeted by a disgruntled passenger. She accused Emily of exaggerating the incident, of twisting her words to fit a narrative of racial discrimination. However, her attempts to deflect blame backfired. The public, fueled by the compelling accounts of Emily, Sarah, and Thomas, saw through her charade. Her denials were met with skepticism and scorn. Her attempts to portray herself as a victim only further fueled the public outrage. The pressure on the airline mounted with each passing day. Their stock prices plummeted, their customer satisfaction, ratings nosedived, and their brand image suffered irreparable damage. The executives, realizing the gravity of the situation, knew they had to act decisively. They launched an internal investigation, interviewing Jennifer, Sarah, and other witnesses. They reviewed security footage from the flight, scrutinizing every interaction, every word, every gesture. The evidence against Jennifer mounted, painting a damning picture of her unprofessional conduct and discriminatory behavior. As the investigation progressed, Jennifer grew increasingly desperate. She realized that her career, her reputation, her entire life was hanging in the balance. She had to find a way to turn the tide, to shift the blame, to escape the consequences of her actions. And so, she resorted to a desperate gamble, a risky move that could either salvage her situation or seal her fate. She decided to contact Emily to offer a deal, a proposition that she hoped would silence her accuser and extinguish the firestorm that threatened to consume her. The phone call came as a surprise, the caller ID flashing an unknown number. Emily hesitated, her finger hovering over the answer button. Could this be the airline? finally ready to offer a resolution? Or perhaps another journalist seeking an interview? With a mix of apprehension and curiosity, she answered the call. Hello? Emily, it's Jennifer. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Jennifer. The woman who had insulted her son, humiliated her, and ignited a firestorm of controversy. What could she possibly want? What do you want? Emily asked, her voice laced with icy disdain. Jennifer's voice, once sharp and confident, now held a tremor of desperation. Emily, I need to talk to you. Meet me, please. Emily scoffed. Meet you? Why would I do that? Because I can make this all go away, Jennifer pleaded. I can make it all stop. Emily's curiosity piqued. What are you talking about? Just meet me, Jennifer insisted. I'll explain everything. Name the place, the time. Please, Emily, I'm begging you. Emily hesitated. Her instinct screamed at her to hang up, to refuse any contact with this woman who had caused her so much pain. But a flicker of curiosity, a desire to understand Jennifer's motives, compelled her to agree. They met at a quiet cafe, tucked away in a secluded corner of the city. Jennifer arrived looking haggard, her eyes shadowed, her usual impeccable appearance replaced by a disheveled air. The confident, assertive flight attendant was gone, replaced by a woman teetering on the brink. Emily, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry. For everything. Emily remained silent, her expression unreadable. I know my words. Were hurtful, Jennifer continued, her voice cracking. I was out of line. I let my anger get the better of me. I didn't mean it, Emily scoffed. Didn't mean it? You called my son clumsy. You insulted his race. You humiliated me in front of a plane full of people. And now you're telling me you didn't mean it? Jennifer's eyes welled up with tears. I was stressed, she pleaded. I was having a bad day. I took it out on you. It was wrong, I know. But please, Emily, believe me, I'm not a racist. Emily's anger flared. Your words said otherwise, she retorted. Jennifer reached across the table, her hand trembling as she touched Emily's arm. Emily, I'm losing everything. My job, my reputation, my friends. I'm being crucified in the media. I can't take it anymore. She withdrew her hand, her voice dropping to a desperate plea. Please, Emily, help me. Tell them you were mistaken. Tell them I didn't say those things. Recant your story. Make it all go away. Emily stared at Jennifer, her heart a mixture of anger and pity. This woman, once so confident and self-assured, was now a broken shell, desperate to escape the consequences of her actions. You want me to lie? Emily asked, her voice incredulous. Jennifer's eyes pleaded for understanding. Not lie, she corrected, her voice a desperate whisper. Just reframe the narrative. Say it was a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation. Say I didn't mean those things. Emily's anger hardened into resolve. I will not lie, she declared, her voice firm. I will not protect you from the consequences of your actions. You hurt my son, you humiliated me, and you ignited a firestorm of hate. You deserve everything that's coming to you. Jennifer's face crumpled, her last shred of hope extinguished. She slumped back in her chair, defeated, her eyes filled with despair. What have I done? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Emily stood up, her gaze unwavering. You made your bed, Jennifer. Now lie in it. She turned and walked away, leaving Jennifer alone with the wreckage of her own making. As she stepped out of the cafe, Emily felt a sense of satisfaction mixed with sadness. Jennifer was paying the price for her actions, but the incident had left scars, not just on Emily and Michael, but on society as a whole. The fight for justice was far from over, but Emily had drawn a line in the sand. She would not be silenced, she would not be intimidated, and she would not back down until justice was served. The boardroom was filled with an air of tense anticipation. Executives, lawyers, and members of the airline's human resources department sat around the polished, mahogany table, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and apprehension. At the head of the table sat Mr. Thompson, the CEO, his expression grave, his eyes fixed on the empty chair opposite him. The door opened, and Jennifer entered, accompanied by her lawyer. She looked pale and drawn, the strain of the past weeks evident in her demeanor. She took her seat, her gaze fixed on the tabletop, avoiding eye contact with the assembled executives. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Jennifer," he began, his voice firm but measured, "we are here today to discuss the serious allegations that have been made against you." He outlined the details of the incident, the public outcry, the media frenzy, and the damage it had caused to the airline's reputation. He emphasized the company's zero-tolerance policy towards discrimination of any kind, stressing that Jennifer's actions, if proven true, would have severe consequences. Jennifer's lawyer, a slick, silver-haired man, with a sharp tongue, jumped to her defense. He argued that the allegations were exaggerated, that Jennifer's words had been taken out of context, that she was the victim of a malicious smear campaign. He painted a picture of Jennifer as a dedicated employee, a victim of circumstance, who had been unfairly targeted by a disgruntled passenger seeking to exploit the current climate of social sensitivity for personal gain. However, his arguments fell flat in the face of the overwhelming evidence. Sarah's testimony, corroborated by other witnesses and supported by security footage from the flight, painted a damning picture of Jennifer's unprofessional conduct and discriminatory behavior. The executives, their faces grim, exchanged uneasy glances. They had hoped for a quick resolution, a way to contain the damage and move on. But the evidence was undeniable, the public outcry unrelenting. They knew they had to take decisive action, not just to appease the public, but to uphold the values of their company. Mr. Thompson, his expression hardening, turned to Jennifer. "Jennifer," he said, his voice grave, "we have reviewed the evidence, and we have come to a decision." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Jennifer's heart pounded in her chest, her breath catching in her throat. "We have no choice but to terminate your employment with the airline effective immediately," Jennifer gasped, her face draining of color. Her lawyer sputtered in protest, but his words were drowned out by the ringing finality of Mr. Thompson's pronouncement. The executives, their faces a mixture of relief and regret, nodded in agreement. Jennifer's career with the airline, a career she had built over years of dedicated service, was over. As Jennifer and her lawyer exited the boardroom, a hush fell over the room. The executives, their faces etched with weariness, began to discuss the next steps, the damage control, the public relations campaign to rebuild the airline's tarnished image. But amidst the somber atmosphere, a new voice emerged, a voice that had been silent until now. Emily, who had been invited to observe the proceedings, stood up, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the executives. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear and steady. The executives turned to her, their expressions a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "I appreciate your decision to terminate Jennifer's employment," Emily continued, her voice gaining strength. "But I believe there's something you need to know." She paused, letting the anticipation build. The executives leaned forward, their curiosity piqued. "I am not just a passenger," Emily declared, her voice ringing with authority. "I am Emily Davis, and I am the majority shareholder of this airline." A collective gasp filled the room. The executives stared at her, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Emily Davis, the renowned entrepreneur, the philanthropist, the champion of social justice. She was their majority shareholder? Emily continued, her voice resonating with power and conviction. "I've been observing your actions, your decisions, your commitment to the values you claim to uphold, and I am not impressed." She outlined her concerns, her disappointment with the airline's initial response to her complaint, the attempts to downplay the incident, the lack of urgency in addressing the issue of racial discrimination within their ranks. "This is not just about Jennifer," she declared, her voice rising with passion. "This is about systemic change. This is about creating a culture of respect, of inclusion, of zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind." She challenged the executives to take concrete action, to implement diversity and inclusion training, to create a safe and welcoming environment for all passengers and employees, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or background. The executives, their faces flushed with a mixture of shame and admiration, listened intently. Emily's words, her unexpected revelation, her passionate plea for change, had shaken them to their core. They realized that this was not just a public relations crisis. It was an opportunity for transformation. An opportunity to live up to their values, to create a better airline, a better world. As Emily concluded her speech, a wave of determination swept through the room. The executives, their eyes shining with newfound purpose, pledged their commitment to change, to create an airline where everyone felt valued, respected, and safe. Emily, her heart filled with hope, smiled. The fight for justice had taken an unexpected turn, but it had yielded a powerful result. The truth had been revealed, and the seeds of change had been sown. The news of Jennifer's dismissal spread like wildfire through the ranks of the airline. Whispers filled the break rooms. Speculation buzzed in the hallways, and a sense of shock and disbelief hung heavy in the air. Jennifer, once a figure of authority, a senior crew member with years of experience, was now a cautionary tale, a symbol of the consequences of unchecked prejudice. Her colleagues, some of whom had admired her efficiency and professionalism, now looked upon her with a mixture of pity and condemnation. The incident had exposed a dark underbelly of their workplace, a hidden bias that had long simmered beneath the surface of polite interactions and professional smiles. Sarah, though relieved that justice had been served, couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her former colleague. She had witnessed Jennifer's descent firsthand, the gradual erosion of her confidence, the desperation in her eyes as she tried to salvage her career and reputation. But Sarah also recognized the necessity of the outcome. Jennifer's actions had not only harmed Emily and Michael, but had also tarnished the reputation of the airline and shaken the trust of its passengers. The dismissal, though painful, was a necessary step towards accountability and healing. The public, meanwhile, reacted with a mix of satisfaction and vindication. The hashtag #Justice for Michael, once a rallying cry for action, now celebrated the victory, a testament to the power of collective outrage and the unwavering pursuit of justice. Emily, though exhausted by the ordeal, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced a formidable opponent, a powerful corporation, and had emerged victorious. She had not only defended her son's dignity, but had also sparked a conversation about racial injustice, challenging the status quo and demanding change. But the victory was bittersweet. The incident had left scars, not just on Emily and Michael, but on society as a whole. The casual prejudice, the subtle discrimination, the ingrained biases that had fueled Jennifer's actions were still deeply rooted in the fabric of society. Emily knew that the fight for true equality was far from over, but she also recognized the power of her own voice, the impact she had made by standing up for what was right. She had shown the world that even ordinary individuals could challenge the powerful, that justice could prevail, and that prejudice in all its forms would not be tolerated. As the dust settled, the airline embarked on a journey of transformation. They implemented diversity and inclusion training programs, revised their customer service protocols, and established a dedicated hotline for reporting incidents of discrimination. They committed to creating a workplace and a travel experience where everyone felt valued, respected, and safe. Jennifer, meanwhile, faced the consequences of her actions. She lost her job, her reputation, and her social standing. The media scrutiny, the public condemnation, and the loss of her livelihood took a heavy toll on her mental and emotional well-being. She retreated from public life, seeking solace in the anonymity of a new city, a new identity. The incident had cost her dearly, but it had also forced her to confront her own biases, her own prejudices, the hidden assumptions that had shaped her worldview. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, a journey of self-reflection, of confronting her own demons, of rebuilding her life from the ashes of her past mistakes. But somewhere within the wreckage of her former self, a glimmer of hope remained, a chance for redemption, a possibility for growth. The price of prejudice had been steep, but it had also opened a door to transformation, a chance for both Jennifer and the airline to learn from their mistakes, to evolve, and to contribute to a more just and equitable world. The dust settled, and life began to find a new rhythm. The media frenzy subsided, the public outrage faded into the background noise of daily life, and the airline, scarred but resolute, continued its journey towards a more inclusive future. Emily, no longer just a passenger but a powerful voice for change within the company, continued to advocate for diversity and inclusion. She worked closely with the airline executives, pushing for meaningful reforms, ensuring that the incident with Jennifer served as a catalyst for lasting transformation. She became a mentor to young employees, sharing her story, inspiring them to stand up for what is right, and empowering them to challenge the status quo. She also established a scholarship fund for underprivileged students pursuing careers in aviation, opening doors to those who had traditionally been excluded from the industry. Michael, the young boy who had unwittingly sparked a national conversation, blossomed under the warmth of his mother's love and the support of their newfound community. The shadows of the incident gradually receded, replaced by a newfound confidence and a sense of pride in his identity. He became an advocate for equality in his own right, sharing his experience with his classmates, educating them about the harmful effects of prejudice and inspiring them to embrace diversity. He even started a Kids Against Racism club at his school, organizing events and activities that promoted understanding and acceptance. Sarah, empowered by her decision to speak out, found a new sense of purpose in her work. She became a vocal advocate for change within the airline, working with management to implement sensitivity training and promote a more inclusive work environment. She also became a mentor to younger flight attendants, encouraging them to speak up against injustice and to use their positions to create positive change. She found solace in the knowledge that her actions had made a difference, that she had played a part in creating a more just and equitable workplace. Thomas, the wise and compassionate observer, continued to offer guidance and support to Emily, Michael, and Sarah. He became a cherished friend and mentor, his wisdom and experience a beacon of light in their lives. He watched with pride as they each embraced their roles as agents of change, using their voices and their platforms to create a better world. He knew that the journey towards true equality was long and arduous, but he also believed in the power of individual action, the ripple effect of small acts of courage and compassion. The incident on the plane, a painful and traumatic experience, had ultimately led to growth and transformation. It had exposed the ugliness of prejudice, but it had also ignited a spark of resistance, a collective determination to create a more just and equitable society. Emily, Michael, Sarah, and Thomas, each in their own way, carried the torch of that determination, illuminating the path towards a future where everyone, regardless of their race, ethnicity, or background, felt valued, respected, and safe. The story of the spilled juice, the racist rant, and the fight for justice became a tale of resilience, of empowerment, and of the enduring human spirit's capacity to overcome adversity and create a better world.
And if this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and helps me to continue creating more amazing stories. Thank you for listening.